Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here with Casey Scott, one of the excellent presenters at the Next Generation of Vedic Astrology Conference. Casey's going to be presenting on this idea of the new moon resolutions each month and the divine personal cycle. And Casey's going to walk us through the inspiration for this class. I've known Casey now for a few years, and he's really using this holistic connection to the new moons, full moons, and our personal kind of relationship with that, and doing great work. And I'm real excited to have him explain this to us. Casey, let her rip.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah,
Thanks for
sure.
having me. Really excited to share this with everybody. And this kind of evolved from when I was doing the certification course with you. And for me, it's not enough just to read the books or have the lessons. I want to have a way to put it into practice, right? To apply the teachings. And this is all my Capricorn energy, right? I want to practice what I preach. And so a couple of years ago, I took this idea of the sun moving through the zodiac on a yearly cycle, and just spent the whole month reviewing the nakshatras and the rashis themselves. And as the sun's going through it, I was just studied on that one particular area, and then built into that the cycles, right? But this was from your training lab where you talked about the new moons and the full moons for each ascendant, right? So that added in not just the signs and the nakshatras, but the houses with it. And so following these cycles through the houses was such a powerful awareness for me. And as I was kind of watching my own life unfold, not wanting to force anything to be what I thought it was, but just
Right.
seeing how it kind of presented itself. And not only in my life, but everybody whose charts I knew in my personal life here at home, and then also on social media, where I was like, someone's talking about something, I was like, that's their ascendant. That's totally the thing that I was looking for, right? So
And so
it
what
was,
and so what you're explaining is that when you have like the new moons relative to what someone's ascendant is, like right now as we're recording this in January, like January 29th of 2021, the last new moon was actually in Sagittarius. So like if you're a Cancer person, that's in the sixth house from your ascendant. So you're having like a sixth house month kind
right.
of thing.
Yeah.
So wherever that those lunation cycles happen, you look at your natal chart, and so Casey's describing how those cycles play out like each year, this kind of like personal cycle.
Yeah. And so that's just had me thinking about it in different terms, and it's expanding my knowledge of the signs and how that presents itself in the world, and the houses and how that manifests in life. And then I was just looking at the cycles and kind of paying attention to how they happen in the sky, right? Because there's power in seeing how that all moves, right? As the sun rises and the moon rises, you're watching it every day to see how they separate and come together. And it's been just an astronomical lesson, and then also really spiritual to kind of follow that cycle and see how it unfolds in my life, right? And then
Like,
after
wow,
I've
there's
kind
a
of
reason why there's
right.
actually the sun
Yeah.
and the moon, they're actually really up
Yeah.
there. Now I understand why they thought the sun and moon were so important, because they're
Yeah.
really big and they're like always moving in relation to each other and us.
Yeah, and it's just fun to watch it and see how it works, and not just oh, randomly the moon appeared, but you'll know, like, yesterday it came up at, it was a full moon, so when the sun went down, the moon came up. And so today the sun will go down, and then a little bit longer goes by, and then the moon will come up. So it's like everything's moving to the east
Yeah.
as it's going through the zodiac, right? So it's just the mechanics of it also bring out a little bit more to the, oh, that's why that the geometry is, my career for 20 years. So seeing how all that plays into the ancient Indian ceremonies and all that, right? So everything had a geometry to it. It wasn't just spiritual, it was also mathematical. And
And in
so,
this class, you're not going to be talking about like each one of the tithes and whatnot, because that's also like even in the in the in the in the training lab that Casey was talking about. You know, I do these daily forecasts where it's actually each of the 15 days. So he's not going to be talking about each of the tithes. He's going to be talking about the lunation cycles. But this divine timing from India, they broke every day was different from the
yeah,
sun and the moon. They're tracking it every day. But the big cycles and the big shifts happen um, on those new moons and full moons. Those are like the halfway and the origin points.
right. Yeah. So I'm just kind of keeping it really basic. The basic principle is that as the moon is waxing, it's getting fuller and increasing, and it's the time for action and cultivation, right? So the moon's kind of showing us what to do, right? What we're supposed to be focusing on. And then as it wanes, it kind of is showing that decrease and more inward and reflective. So that's showing us to focus on more of those things. So the
And
more we
basic
kind of
shouldn't be meant to
harmonize,
say that it's not integral. In fact, the more quote basic it is, the more foundational it is, because that's really the basis even of this, is that these foundational cycles that take place throughout the year. And again, whether you know it or not, this is what's happening. That's the big thing about astrology, is we start to wake up to something that's been happening the whole time. We're like, God,
right?
why didn't I know this 20 years ago? That every month there's 2 weeks of this, and then 2 weeks of that, and then another one of this. It literally, when you get this timing, you break your life into these like sort of 2 week cycles.
Right. And it's funny to go back and look at some of the big events in my life and how much they were there the whole time and I didn't even know, right? And so the name of this course is New Moon's Resolution. So I use that because, it's January and a lot of people are focusing on their New Year's resolutions. And how helpful would it be to have a little breakdown of what the cosmic assignment is for each month, right?
There it
So that you
is,
kind of
cosmic assignment. Want me
cosmic
to get it
assignment,
from you?
right?
That's Casey's butt. Your assignment this month.
Well, as a teacher, I'm always good at doing my homework, right?
Yeah, Casey's doing it, and he always has your posts are so funny because they're like your assignment this month. He turns it into some work. He's got a lot of Capricorn planets there, so
Right.
it's
Yeah, I
great.
need some help making it fun, right? That's why I picked a Gemini teacher.
Yeah,
So, yeah, the with all that, right? The being able to measure where the cycles are, because I write these posts every new moon and full moon about what it is generally, what the sign is, how it shows up, and then to be able to kind of know your rising sign or your ascendant and kind of measure, like, so for me, a Scorpio ascendant, right? The latest new moon happened in Sagittarius, so that's the second sign from Scorpio, the second house. So I've been looking around and watching to see how second house things come into existence, right? And it's my birthday, so I got a call from my mom, and we talked about childhood things, and so that wasn't even on purpose, right? It was just unfolding. I was like, oh, there it is, second house thing. So this is a great way to take the things we read in your book about second house and be like, there it is, that's how it manifested, right? So it just expands the knowledge of me being able to describe that to my clients, right? And
and the second house brings in that quality. It's not the mother part; it's the values and the value that you get from it. Because your relationship with your mother is one thing, but the value that she has brought forth in your life and the values that you can connect upon—that's actually the second house part of it. Because some
yeah,
people have a relationship with their mother, and whatever the values are that are between the two of you, that's really what the second house brings out. And so you'll probably also see that value exchange. Values is the big thing with the second house.
yeah, and then just the childhood itself, right? The
Right.
childhood and all that is the structure of your life going forward, right? And so
And for you
that,
with the family now, it's the second house that you've created yourself. And
mhm,
you have a second house environment. Actually we all do, but especially once we start having our own family, we start to trace the thread between the values we were raised in and the ones we're creating.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So really, I'm excited to bring this out to everybody and describe some of the nuts and bolts of it, and then also how to really understand what your assignment is, right? And to take that serious thing and make it fun, right?
My
You can
assignment this
just
month was to be dealing with a lot of people.
right,
Seventh
yeah,
house.
yeah,
So you've seen that. So you've seen some of that.
yeah, right. Well, a lot of relating and relationships.
Back and forth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because, I've been dealing with, organizing this fantastic, conference with all these great teachers. But of course, it's been a lot of back and forth. I've been, and again, this is seventh house. Seventh house isn't just a romantic partners. It's people that we're engaged with. It's a big house of business too, because you're having to go back and forth and have an even exchange, a fair exchange, communicating, being flexible, all that stuff. So for me,
right.
that's Sagittarius because I'm Gemini has been in my seventh house. So again, while you're experiencing this through your second house of values, communication, even like this kind of thing, you've been more like seventh house for me, like one of a lot of people I'm having to deal with more than I usually do because I'm usually just here doing my own thing.
Right.
Full moon in Sagittarius, it's like, okay, now I'm having to be negotiating and doing all these things with a lot of people.
Yeah, right.
With something with something at stake. That's the other thing with the seventh house is where there's something at stake.
Right, trying to find that mutual thing that works for everybody.
Yeah, that works for everyone. That sort of agreement. So you'll see things like contracts and negotiations, and I need this from you, and then I give this to you. So,
right.
so I'm bringing this out because one of the big parts also that Casey will be talking about, and he doesn't have it here intentionally, but when you say measuring cycles from the ascendant, that also includes things like he's also going to be teaching on the astrology houses and how this evolution through the year. Because, for example, like he gave the example of he's Scorpio, which means that he had the new moon. There's a way to measure the year just based on your ascendant. Like in many ways, we have a birthday every year, which is like a solar return. Well, you can measure your personal evolution each year from the lunation cycle that starts in your first house. So the new moon that happened in Casey's first house this year, which by the way was an eclipse, which is also why when the nodes move into your first and seventh houses, that means that your year is starting on an eclipse. But so the previous month, Casey's new moon was really the start of his year as well, because it was that new moon in Scorpio, his first house. Now the first house moves into the second house. Now he had just had the new moon. So he's also going to be teaching about how first house becomes second house, how second house becomes third house. And so your assignments each month, they also build on themselves.
Yeah, and with my coaching clients, I talk about this, the house before and that cycle and how that brings into this one, and then we'll work on that one, and then I also give them a little preview of the next one and how one turns into the next to the next, right? So it's like you kind of understand this holistic zodiac, right? That you talk about that in your courses, the holistic zodiac. So we have to get out of thinking that we're a slice of the pie and understand that there's Sagittarius is somewhere in everybody's chart and Capricorn is somewhere in everyone else's chart. As just our perspective on it changes as our ascendant shifts, right? And
So
so
the great part I really like too is how you're going to be explaining that evolution of the year also. Like you before we started, you gave that example about Mr. Rogers. Can you share that? That was a great example of what I'm talking about.
yeah, one of my case studies for this class will be the U.S. Supreme Court appearance that Mr. Rogers went and fought for the funding. Right, it's been going around on social media at various times, but he went and was really fighting because they were going to cut the funding for public television, and so he talked about how kids are on cartoons and everyone when they're mad they just bonk somebody on the head, right? So that was he wanted to give some alternative solutions, and so he talked about this song he made in in his show that was called "What Do You Do with the Mad You Feel?" And it's about positive ways to kind of take that feeling of anger and kind of control it and turn it into something positive, right? And so this was as a full moon was happening, right? I kind of plugged in, when did this happen? It was there. It's all public record because it was Supreme Court, right? So it was as the sun was in Aries, which is his first house, right? About me, myself, and my identity and how much integrity I have, right? Exalted sun on the first house is like a lot of integrity, a lot of power in there. And so across from that, the moon was in Libra, which is about fairness and equality and exchange. And so, and then if we go down one level and say the nakshatra, right? Because that's where we get a lot of the Indian culture and really the juice to the stories behind it, right? And so Bharani, where the sun was in Aries, is about control and being able to harness the energy and turn it into something, right? So the symbol is the female reproductive system, which takes that energy and turns it into something, right? So what do you do with the mad you feel, right? So the anger is Mars and Aries, right? And Bharani is control, right? So it was right there. It was expressed in, nobody in that room probably knew about the Vedic astrology part of it, right?
And I'm sure he didn't either.
Right?
But
Yeah. And then,
the full moon was also in Swati, which
yeah,
is about PR, sharing things with the public
right. It's ruled by Vayu, which is scattering like the wind, right? Public information,
in a
public
good
television.
way. It's
Yeah.
sharing the positive message.
Yeah. So it was a very positive dharmic case study to use. And it was just
And
something
so
I
the way
like.
it plays out is that was the midway. The new moon had come together in Aries in his first house, but that was starting that new cycle for him that year, like we were just saying, because he's
Right.
an Aries ascendant. So again, it's not the sun like your birthday, but your ascendant. So that cycle in the first house, when the sun comes in, that's the beginning like of your cycle. Like that's where
Right.
the first house cycle begins. So he was in
Yeah.
Aries, so that lunation cycle in Aries was about the beginning of his year. Again,
Yeah.
so as it says here, the new moon resolution, again, every month we're at a new point where we have a new assignment, like a new resolution, but it begins at a point as well based on your ascendant. So that's a great case study of his year started off with him in front of the Supreme Court teaching about what do you do about the mad you feel. And again, it's like perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is
It's really
great,
potent.
Casey.
And
This is exactly what we wanted to do. We could keep talking forever, as you
yeah.
see. We can just keep going back. I want to keep these a little shorter because this is just to give you an idea
Yeah.
of what you'll learn in Casey's class at the Next Generation of Vedic Astrology Conference. So again, you can go ahead and register. And I want to really thank you, Casey, for showing up and for sharing this with us today.
All right. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to see everybody at the conference.